Good evening. You are watching Legal Help Desk on the Solar News channel. This show is about making the law work for you by giving legal advice on topics that matter to you. I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno.
And I'm Attorney Nepomuceno. Tonight, we will discuss your legal rights on the issue of medical malpractice. What you need to know should you be a victim of it.
Our guest for tonight is Attorney Edward Chico, Corporate Secretary for the Philippine Academy of Medical Specialists, and Dr. Rustico Jimenez, President of the Private Hospitals Association of the Philippines. Good evening, Doctor, and good evening po, Attorney.
It's very rare that you say good evening, Attorney, and good evening, Doctor.
Yeah, dalawang professionals, no? Very...
Strange bedfellows.
Yes. We have a very strong cast of guests
Yes,
tonight.
I know.
Yes.
Thank you. So, Dr. Rusty and Dr. Ed, no?
Yeah.
You know, I always make this joke that parang whenever we forge something, we don't say inaabogado, we always say dinodoktor.
Oo nga eh. So, kung sino ba ang mas tricky talaga among the professionals?
A tricky profession, yeah.
But this is a very interesting topic because usually a lot of people think that we have a law on medical malpractice, di ba? Pagka nagkaka-problem sa doctors, parang they usually say, magdedemanda kami dahil medical malpractice yan. But I guess this is a time for us to clarify. Meron ba talagang, do we really have a law on medical malpractice in the Philippines?
I guess we should clarify that medical malpractice in itself is not considered a crime. Under our legal system, I guess the public should understand that just because something is wrong doesn't mean it's unlawful. And just because something is unlawful doesn't mean it's a crime.
Right.
So there has to be a law that declares it as such. And unfortunately for medical malpractice, there is no law that defines it as an offense. So the implication would be, for example, if a physician is found guilty of negligence, he may be held civilly liable for payment of damages based on torts or Article 2176 of the Civil Code, or criminally liable for reckless imprudence based on Article 365 of the Revised Penal Code, and not necessarily based on medical malpractice per se.
So this medical act, we have a medical act, right?
Yes.
It doesn't cover anything about medical malpractice?
I don't think so, because it's more on the impositions of certain fine or disposition for doctors for negligence on their part.
Yeah.
Yes. And
So,
then I saw the Medical Act of 1958. This is
Yeah.
what we're talking about. No? Parang it's more of the composition of the
Yes.
board, and also
Specialists.
it even also exempts students of
Yes.
medicine and even nurses.
Yes.
So it's really more for the qualification and licensing of doctors.
Yes.
Okay.
And recently, the DOH made certain clarifications on this, because certain hospitals are not being called now hospitals
Okay.
because of the lack of the facilities that are available.
I see.
Okay.
Now, having said that, you know, of course, in the U.S., no, we read about the Michael Jackson trial, which is so big. I mean, medical malpractice in the U.S. is so huge. Is there, before we get into the case in point or the actual topic, no, is there a bill that's going on that you think that eventually there will be a medical malpractice law?
Well, if you ask me, there should be. In 2002, if I'm not mistaken, there was a bill filed in Congress seeking precisely to define medical malpractice, but for some reasons, the entire medical community, I'm talking about all doctors, physicians, hospital owners, administrators, they were basically against the bill, and nothing happened. And last year, they filed a Physicians Act of 2012, which unfortunately, I would say does not really address the issue on medical malpractice per se. What it talks about merely is that, I'm pretty sure Attorney Rusty will agree with me because...
Dr. Rusty.
I'm sorry, Dr. Rusty. But
Outnumbered kasi.
Oo,
Three
outnumbered
lawyers
kasi
against
eh.
one doctor.
But Dr. Rusty and I kasi, we basically have the same advocacy. We work together on a lot of these issues.
Okay.
The problem with that bill is that it does not really address the issue on medical malpractice, but seeks to create a medical integrated society, because in the medical profession, there is no integrated bar of the Philippines.
No
So
equivalent.
it's
No
more
equivalent.
so it's more of an association of
Association
doctors.
issue.
So
Doctors.
again, wala pa rin, we don't really have a candidate for a bill that would pass into law a medical malpractice
Yes, there is none.
crime as a crime, or
Yes.
basically as a cause of action.
That's
when
why the
filing
course of the
cases.
patients are usually only through the civil law and the what you call when you ask for confinement, or it's more on the civil code, not on
Yes,
the
and,
exact law for
Yeah.
physicians or doctors.
Dr. Rusty and Attorney Chico, I'd like to get your thoughts on this. I heard before that it's actually difficult to succeed when you're filing a civil case against a doctor or even a criminal case for negligence because doctors do not want to be witnesses against each other. So basically, usually it helps your case if you have an
Yeah.
expert witness, another
Yes,
doctor
yes.
saying na, yes, in my opinion, there was malpractice.
Yes.
Is it true that usually it's difficult to get a doctor as an expert witness?
Definitely, because that is part of the camaraderie of the doctors.
Yeah, you won't be witnessing against.
Yes,
the-
because
yeah.
it could happen to you also.
Now, in cases of
I guess it's understandable.
in cases of res ipsa loquitur, where the thing speaks for itself, where you left a glove inside there, or let's say a
Sponge.
An
scalpel,
instrument,
and it's, which has happened, right? There have been cases in the past where some medical object was left inside.
Yes.
The course there is still through revised penal code 365
Yeah.
or
Yes,
criminal negligence, or so it won't be any
Or
other,
damages.
or
Civil
damages.
case for
Damages,
damages.
yes.
Right,
Oo.
right.
Pero siguro, let me just clarify, unless the injury itself is proof of negligence.
Yeah.
As you said, for example, nakaiwang ka ng instrumento sa loob ng katawan, you can basically dispense with the necessity to present an expert witness.
Yeah.
And
And the court normally will rule in favor of the victim. But if that is not the case, I just would like to cite a particular case decided by the Supreme Court, which sheds light on the issue. So, for example, there was a doctor who was allegedly guilty of negligence, and a case was filed against her. And in the course of the proceedings, they were able to gather that indeed she was negligent. For example, the clinic was dirty, there weren't enough equipment to attend to the cases, and in fact, the facilities were not even sufficient, assuming emergency cases will arise in the course of the operation. So clearly, it seems that the physician is
Negligent.
guilty of negligence. So a criminal case for reckless imprudence was filed against her. But at the end of the day, the Supreme Court had to acquit her because apparently the prosecutor or the prosecution was not able to present an expert witness. Ang sabi kasi, and
difficult naman, no?
yes, and if I may say lang kasi, people should understand kasi that the medical profession normally involves highly specialized skills, which ordinary person or ordinary people could not basically comprehend or understand, not even judges, not even lawyers. So that's why a judge, for example, could not determine whether or not what has been done is tantamount to negligence.
Right.
So that's why there is a need to present an expert witness. And if you cannot present that, then problema na. So that's why we've been lobbying for a bill that will really define what medical malpractice is.
So would you, doctors, the Society of Doctors, are they for? I'm assuming they're not really
Yeah.
for.
Of course, they are not, because you will have to have the insurance.
Insurance,
Yeah.
Malpractice
yeah.
insurance.
Malpractice insurance, yeah.
Yeah, and then of course, if it goes up to the higher owners of the hospital, like one case that I have to intervene because the hospital was charged together with the owners and the director and all the heads of the departments. So
Yeah.
it has to be proven, definitely, as the attorney said, definitely there should be severe malpractice that entails all the members of the team that they took care of the patient.
Yeah.
So in this case, a very big hospital, I have to intervene so that
Yeah.
the case will only be not for the other hospitals, but
Yes.
only in this hospital.
So basically, if you experience medical malpractice, you can file a case against not only the doctor but the
also the
hospital
hospital
as
well.
itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the reason now of the Supreme Court is if you place the names of the doctors in the bulletin board of your hospital, it means
As consultants.
yes, it means that you had due diligence to examine the qualifications of these doctors. So but even if they are not stockholders of the hospital, they could be charged
Okay.
together with you.
It's as if they are employees. I think
Right.
the basis of liability is Article 2180. Employers are supposedly liable for the negligence of their employees.
Right.
But that's good to know because, again, usually
just-
hospitals have more resources. So at least you can make the hospital liable and then they can just claim after the negligent
Yeah, it just
doctor.
provides you more avenues to get compensation if you feel
Yes.
that you've been aggrieved.
Yes. Okay. So there are more questions from our viewers, and I'd hate to cut our discussion short, but we have a few questions that need to be answered.
Okay.
Maybe we can answer a few of them with the help of our guests. Our first question is from Jackie, and it reads, what kind of evidence do I need to prove that a doctor was careless in providing treatment? Ito yung pinag-usapan natin. One expert witness definitely is a must, no? What other types of evidence?
Because we have to prove really that this doctor is negligent, because we as doctors has different forms of training. So what could
medical
be bad for another doctor is good for another doctor.
Yes. So type of evidence would be
The medical records.
medical
of course.
records. So it's safe for dapat pag patients. They have to keep those documents
Yes.
or
Yeah.
make copies. They can request
Yes,
from
definitely.
hospitals. What if the hospitals refuse to give them copies?
The hospital cannot refuse as long as you are really in need of it. If that is the case, they can ask the court to give
The court can compel them to
give the
submit
records.
all those records.
Okay. And then another question is, you mentioned that it is difficult to get fellow doctors as expert witnesses. What if you get a doctor from abroad to be a witness? Would that be allowed, do you think?
I'm not sure whether that is allowed, no. But because now we have international accreditations, so I think it's possible. But
possible, yeah.
we have also a understanding with 10 Asian countries that you can practice anywhere in these countries as long as you are approved by the Department of Health.
No, in relation to evidence,
That's good.
normally kasi you have to prove that, lalo when you're trying to prove negligence, you have to show that he or she did not exercise the appropriate diligence necessary in that particular situation. Would the standard be higher, considering that we're talking about a doctor here? Would the standard expected be higher in terms of, providing evidence, that he was negligent?
Well, that would be expected. In fact, the Supreme Court in a long line of cases has emphatically stated that whether or not a physician is guilty of negligence is something that can only be determined in accordance with the degree of care that is normally, ordinarily observed
Correct. Yeah.
by members of the same profession in good standing under
standing.
similar circumstances. So what does it simply tell us is this: unless you have an expert witness, there is no way you can actually prove your case. Unless, of course, the case would fall under the doctrine of res ipsa loquitur, which means
Na
the thing
obvious
speaks
na
for
obvious
itself.
na.
Obvious
Yeah.
na talagang
Oo,
negligent.
So,
ang
hindi lang
doktor.
ordinary care to.
Pero
Yeah.
hindi lang ordinary care.
Yeah.
So that's why you have to consult the peers, the
Right.
colleagues.
Yeah.
All right. Well, our next question naman is from Nelson via Facebook, and he asks, my son was rushed to the hospital for severe stomach ache a few months ago. We originally thought it might be appendicitis, but the doctors ruled it out because they said that the symptoms suggested gastroenteritis instead. They placed him under observation for some days and eventually got him x-rayed and saw something blocking his intestines. They operated on him, and the surgeon discovered that his appendix had already ruptured. My son is now okay, but had to spend a few more days in the hospital due to the incompetence. Does this case classify as medical negligence? Can I file a case against the doctors handling my son's case?
It's very hard to answer this question because you do not have the records, exact records.
Yeah.
Because it's possible that the white count, that's what we usually observe, the white W count of the patient, if it's not high, even if the patient is, you cannot just get in and operate on the appendix of the
That's
patient.
why baka initially it was not obvious
Yes.
that it was appendicitis,
That's why
or
I
maybe it was not even appendicitis in the first place
at the
and
beginning.
developed
Yes.
into. So I guess this is what you were saying earlier, na ang hirap talaga
Prove.
i-prove and to prosecute because
Yes.
it's very technical, no, and difficult.
And not all patients have the same symptoms 100%. So even if you have an appendix, for example, attorney has an appendix, if another girl has an appendix, it could not issue the same signs and
the
symptoms.
symptoms might be different.
Yes.
So but for our viewers' question then, she can still file a case, but I guess she has to gather all the medical records and
Yes.
evidence first, and then determine if
And
meron
go to a
talagang
medical
negligence.
legal doctor.
Go to a medical legal. That's a good advice. So go to a medical legal
Because
doctor.
that is he is the best person to answer the question.
Oo,
And
para
I think-
hindi masayang yung time niya, no?
Yes.
To file a case, tapos yung pala hindi naman negligent.
And we should understand that in this case, the burden of evidence is really on the victim
On
to
the
prove
complainant.
that
On the
there is,
plaintiff,
on the
yeah.
complainant that
Yeah.
there is actually negligence.
Yeah.
Okay.
And given the degree of difficulty, then it's really an ordeal.
Okay. So we'll have more questions to answer after a break. We still have a lot to discuss with our guests. Keep it here on the Solar News channel. Legal Help Desk will return after this short break. You're still watching Legal Help Desk on the Solar News Channel, and we are still joined by our guests, Atty. Chico of the Philippine Academy of Medical Specialists and Dr. Jimenez, President of the Private Hospitals Association of the Philippines.
Yan.
So-
So Karen, why don't you were sharing to us your
off
own
kanina
medical
during the break, I was
your
saying,
own medical ordeal.
covered ba dito ang mga dentists? Because when I was young, actually, one of my dentists before made the mistake of pulling out the wrong tooth. Tapos nung chinek niya ulit, buti na lang temporary tooth pa
my
lang, di
God.
permanent. Kundi baka nakapustiso ako ngayon. And then when he checked again, sabi niya, ay mali yung kabila dapat. So they took out the other tooth as well. So for a while, my cousins were teasing me na bungal because I didn't have my two front teeth. So I still have old pictures of that. Na wala akong
We'd like
two
to
front
see proof,
teeth. Yeah.
So-
So I was curious, ngayong merong, there's some people lobbying at least for medical malpractice bill. Will they also cover dentists, for example?
I would suggest that we cover that also, the doctors.
Veterinarian?
Yes.
Veterinarian doctors? Oh, yeah.
The midwives.
They're doctors as
Yes.
well, yeah.
And some of the technicians who are controlling, for example, MRI,
Yes.
CT scan.
Yeah.
Because in the Philippine Medical Act, it explicitly exempts sa coverage nila
Yes.
dentists
Yeah.
and
Optometrists.
optometrists as well. Oh,
And
yung sa
the
mga
Good Samaritan
eyes.
doctors.
Oo.
Yeah, right?
But
That's
then,
not covered, yeah.
did you see the draft of the current bill for medical malpractice? Kung kasama itong mga to.
Well, unfortunately, the current bill that is pending in Congress does not consider those issues. As I said, it mainly focuses on the need now to create an organization of doctors.
Ala IB.
Yeah, that will
IB
supervise
Philippines,
and
yeah.
regulate.
Yeah.
And there is really something wrong with that because the medical profession faces a lot of problems which cannot be resolved by merely instituting one integrated organization to supervise them. Medyo kasi may politikang nakahalo doon and I hate to
Yeah.
discuss it on TV.
Yeah.
But siguro si
Dr.
Dr.
Jimenez.
Maybe it's,
Dr.
maybe it's
Rusty
the doctors
could
of the
explain more.
the doctors of the senators and the congressmen are lobbying.
No, because some of them are doctors also.
Yeah.
We usually appear in the hearings in Congress and Senate. Usually, there is really some political issue.
Yeah.
So when these things will touch on family, usually they are very hesitant.
Attorney Ed, and maybe Dr. Rusty, if there's some doctors who actually, I think, they also require the signing of waivers. Di ba? I don't know if that's a practice, signing of quit claim or whatever.
Yes, there are waivers when you enter the hospital. You sign a lot of things before the. But in all the court cases that I have attended and all that I have intervened, it's not being by the court.
It's not being
protection.
recognized.
Yes.
And Attorney Chico, are these waivers valid?
Well, they are not valid kasi to begin with, as I said, you need to understand that the medical profession is very sensitive, very delicate, and it involves delivery of basic health services. So these waivers, even if they are voluntarily executed by the patients, they cannot be considered valid, and they will not exempt an erring physician from civil and criminal liability.
Okay. So in other words, even if you signed a waiver, if there's something wrong with the treatment or nagka-damage sa'yo, you can still sue them.
Yes.
Oo, kaya dapat linawin natin yan sa mga tao kasi ang problema sa waivers na to, nagkakaroon ng mindset na kung pasyente ka, bawal ako magreklamo kasi nag-waiver ako.
Nag-waiver ako eh. Oo.
So I guess this is about time we clarify this. If you happen to have a case, go to a lawyer, file a case. You can actually even remove the license of the physician.
Yeah, I was going to go to that. Let's say what I've been hearing so far, if you file a criminal case or a civil case, it's a little tough because you have to have expert witnesses and all that. And let's just face it, sometimes presenting evidence in any case, more so in medical malpractice, it's tough, no? But let's say I want to make it a little bit painful for this doctor and so that he'll pay or he'll settle. I'm going to file a case administratively sa Philippine
It's a PRC.
PRC, Professional
Regulations
Regulatory
Commission.
Yeah. Is that possible?
Yeah, that is possible. In fact, right now, I handle a case before the PRC, also involving a physician. But sometimes it's also a bit tedious there because it also takes a long period of time for them to come up with a decision.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you just have to do what needs to be done in
Sorry,
order to
now
make
that we're on
the
the
physician pay.
topic of licenses, one of the controversial topics before was Hayden Ko, diba? His license was actually
But that wasn't for
But,
malpractice yata. no?
and that's not from medical malpractice. So basically, my question is, so if you have a doctor and you felt that you were wronged in a way, then kahit walang medical malpractice per se, kunwari wala namang damage dun sa treatment, but you felt na he was unethical or something, you can go to the PRC and have his license revoked.
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, I think it's pretty much like the law profession. There's this concept of nobility of the
profession,
medical profession. Look at Hayden Co. It's a case of malpractice, although it has nothing to do with medicine.
Was it a case of malpractice?
Okay.
Ah,
But it has nothing to do with medicine.
More of
That's right.
ethical, I
Yeah.
think.
That's,
Yeah.
Now, let's continue answering questions pala from our viewers, starting with Tessa, who is asking us via Facebook. I'd like to file a case against a doctor who mistakenly prescribed medicines to my 10-year-old son. The medication he prescribed resulted in a major allergic reaction from my son, and we had to rush him to the hospital to be treated. Where should I file my case?
PRC.
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 Again, I will say you get the best medical legal doctor.
Okay. To make sure,
make sure,
na
yes,
wala
oo.
ngang
Yeah.
na meron talaga medical malpractice para
Yes,
hindi
because
rin sayang yung time
sayang
niya.
yung effort if hindi mo makukuha yung talagang proper evidence and the right timing when to file the case.
Yes.
Yeah, but of course, you can also file a criminal case and a civil case against the doctor. But
Will be filed in the court.
in the court.
Yeah,
oo.
regional trial court. Okay.
But in this case, when you file a case, no, for against a doctor, is it necessary, required that you establish a physician-patient relationship? Kasi it could be a situation wherein parang I was just asking a friend, about something who happens to be a doctor, but he's not charging me or anything.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, it's just loosely defined
Loosely
as
defined.
a lawyer-client relationship. The moment a patient goes to you and would ask for advice, and you give out advice and
Right.
probably administer some medicine or
Yes.
something, then the presumption of such relationship would already exist.
Yeah, I think even without consideration,
Yes.
because I was reading the Medical Act, and basically even without consideration, you are still covered by the
Yes.
Philippine Medical Act.
Yeah.
So I think this is a good guideline if we have a medical malpractice.
Yes,
Yeah.
especially if
Act, no?
especially now with the advent of all these gadgets. That's why we are very careful of prescribing
Over
medicines by
text, message, or
because
yes.
that could be the evidence against you.
Oo nga, no?
If something
Yeah.
happens to the
Yeah.
patient.
Yeah, and I sometimes do that with my doctor.
Yeah.
Pag nagmamadali na talaga ako, what should I drink? Ito yung symptoms ko.
I'm in extreme
So you
pain.
can
Oo nga.
see that sometimes the doctor refuses because that's
Oo
the
nga, kasi
evidence
yung
already.
thrill, yeah, that's true.
I see.
Okay, now Dominic of Makati is asking, if a doctor does not ask for my medical history and prescribes me medicine that has side effects like lowering blood pressure if I am hypotensive, does that count as medical malpractice? He did not clarify to me that this medicine has side effects.
All medicines have side effects, so I think it is prudent for the doctor to get the medical history.
Okay.
So in this case, he can ask
Yes.
for the doctor because he did not get the medical history.
Okay.
Medical history is the basic for treatment.
Okay, so kung nagkaroon nga ng side effects
That's right.
because of that, then basically that's proof of negligence on the part of this doctor.
Yes, definitely.
And I guess to a certain extent, it will also fall under res ipsa loquitur.
Yes.
Because there was a
Yeah.
blatant failure on the part of the physician to
You
ask
should-
for the history.
They should be, because you should be diligent enough to get the medical history first.
Okay.
Because all these laboratory tests and X-rays and MRIs are only additional
Right, I see.
mode of to confirm your diagnosis.
Wow. Quite
Okay.
interesting. Now, unfortunately, we're running out of time. But before we leave, let's give a quick recap of what we have discussed so far for the benefit of our viewers when it comes to medical malpractice.
So I think number one would be there is no medical malpractice
There's
act.
none,
So
yeah.
if you get maybe wrong diagnosis or if you suffer damages, then the solutions would be one, according to Attorney Chico, you file
A criminal case based on reckless imprudence, or a civil case based on torts, or you can file an administrative case before the PRC.
There you
yes.
go.
And
Yeah.
then Dr. Jimenez, any tips
Any-
to
yeah.
all the
As I said
viewers
earlier,
/ patients out there?
You go to the best medical legal doctor so that all the cases that you will encounter, because the doctor can explain to you what are the possible consequences of what you will do.
Okay. And then, pagka meron ng gusto mag-file ng case and they can't find an expert witness, do you have a tip on the best way they can find an expert witness na doctor?
Because you have really to know the specialty of the doctor who did the treatment. So you can ask the doctor who is also specialty in that field.
Yes.
That will give you the expert opinion on this case.
Okay.
But the usual happening is they do not want to be a witness against the doctor.
So
But you can still
there's a
find.
legal recourse, but practically it's going to be tough.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
very tough. But we have all the rights.
Yeah.
If patients have the rights, the doctors have also the rights.
Yes.
Right, that's good. All right, unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for tonight. We'd like to thank our guests this evening, Attorney Chico of the Philippine Academy of Medical Specialists and Dr. Jimenez, President of the Private Hospitals Association of the Philippines, for being with us today. I'm Attorney Rod Nepomuceno.
And I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno. Join us again next Monday as we discuss your legal rights on the issue of the no return, no exchange policy. Good night. Oo nga.
US, no, we read about the Michael Jackson trial, which is so big. I mean, medical malpractice in the US is so huge. Is there, before we get into the case in point or the actual topic, no, is there a bill that's going on that you think that eventually there will be a medical malpractice law?
Well, if you ask me, there should be. In 2002, if I'm not mistaken, there was a bill filed in Congress seeking precisely to define medical malpractice, but for some reasons, the entire medical community, I'm talking about all doctors, physicians, hospital owners, administrators, they were basically against the bill and nothing happened. And last year, they filed a Physicians Act of 2012, which unfortunately, I would say does not really address the issue on medical malpractice per se. What it talks about merely is that I'm pretty sure Attorney Rusty will agree with me because
Doc, this is a time for us to clarify. Meron ba talagang, do we really have a law on medical malpractice in the Philippines?
I guess we should clarify that medical malpractice in itself is not considered a crime. Under our legal system, I guess the public should understand that just because something is wrong doesn't mean it's unlawful. And just because something is unlawful doesn't mean it's a crime.
Right.
So there has to be a law that declares it as such. And unfortunately for medical malpractice, there is no law that defines it as an offense. So the implication would be, for example, if a physician is found guilty of negligence, he may be held civilly liable for payment of damages based on torts or Article 2176 of the Civil Code, or criminally liable for reckless imprudence based on Article 365 of the Revised Penal Code, and not necessarily based on medical malpractice per se.
Philippine Academy of Medical Specialists, and Dr. Rustico Jimenez, President of the Private Hospitals Association of the Philippines. Good evening, Doctor, and good evening po, Attorney.
It's very rare that you say good evening, attorney, and good evening, doctor.
Yeah, dalawang professionals, no? Very...
Strange bedfellows.
Yes.
Yeah.
We have a very strong cast of guests
Yes,
tonight.
I know.
Thank you.
So Dr. Rusty and Dr. Ed, no?
Yeah.
You know, I always make this joke that parang whenever we forge something, we don't say inaabogado, we always say dino doktor.
Oo nga eh. So sino ba ang mas tricky talaga among the professionals?
A tricky profession, yeah.
But this is a very interesting topic because usually a lot of people think that we have a law on medical malpractice, di ba? Pagka nagkaka-problem sa doctors, parang they usually say, magdedemanda kami dahil medical malpractice yan. But I guess...
So this medical act, we have a medical act, right?
Yes.
It doesn't cover anything about medical malpractice?
I don't think so because it's more on the impositions of certain fine or disposition for doctors for negligence on their part.
Yeah.
Yes. And
So-
then I saw the Medical Act of 1958. This is what we're talking about. No? Parang it's more of the composition of the
Yes.
board, and also
Specialists.
it even also exempts students of
Yes.
medicine and even nurses.
Yes.
So it's really more for the qualification and licensing of doctors.
Yes.
Okay.
And recently, the DOH made certain clarifications on this because certain hospitals are not being called now hospitals.
Okay.
because of the lack of the facilities that are available.
I see, I see.
Okay.
Now having said that, of course, in the U.
Good evening. You are watching Legal Help Desk on the Solar News Channel. This show is about making the law work for you by giving legal advice on topics that matter to you. I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno.
And I'm Attorney Rod Nepomuceno. Tonight, we will discuss your legal rights on the issue of medical malpractice. What you need to know should you be a victim of it.
Our guest for tonight is Attorney Edward Chico, Corporate Secretary for the